Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for that intro. Hi, everybody. Lovely to read about where you are all from. And I'm really happy to have been invited by Helbling to create and deliver this session on a topic that I love, which is creativity. But the topic of creativity is massive. So in this session, to narrow it down, we're going to be exploring possibility thinking, and I'm going to be using what if questions as our guide. Like, what if every English lesson could spark imagination and creativity? What if children could explore, imagine, and create while learning the language? What if the role of teachers was not to provide answers, but to help children imagine new possibilities? But before we really start, I want to get to know you a bit more, and I want to get your fingers ready to use the chat box, because we will be using the chat box a lot today to interact. So I would like you to share, please, in the chat box, what's the weather like where you are today? What is the weather like where you are today? Hot, says Jane. Cloudy, says Fernando. Elisa says sunny. It's very hot. Windy, cloudy, scorching sun, a little cold. Lovely. How it's a very sunny day here in London. It's 5 o'clock and it's quite beautiful outside, a bit chilly, but not London chilly. So it's quite all right. But I'm just going to twist that question around a little bit. And I'm going to ask you to let your imagination run wild now, because you will have a lot of opportunities to let your imagination run wild today. And I'm going to ask you, what if we lived on a planet made of ice cream? What would the weather be like if we lived on a planet made of ice cream? Chocolatey. That's a good one, Elvira. Freezing. The poles would still be melting. It would be frozen. Strawberry. Delicious. Soft. Snowy. Frozen. Lovely. Don't only think about temperature. Think about snow. What would happen if it snowed? Maybe it would snow small ice cream scoops. Maybe it would be really colourful with all the different flavours. And what would the rain be like? Would it rain sprinkles instead of water? Or would the rain be so frozen? Strawberry ice cream weather, sticky rain. Okay, and it would be a sweet life, Laura. That's lovely. Yeah. But what would happen if it was sunny and hot on our planet made of ice cream? What could happen then? Yeah, the ice cream would probably melt. And it might make rivers of chocolate and strawberry sauce. Who knows? So I'm going to be asking a lot of creative questions like this today, and questions that you can use in your classrooms. So all these little questions that I'll be asking are things that you can take into your classrooms. If we ask, what's the weather like in a classroom? It's usually a question that we all know the answer to. The teacher knows the answer. We just look out the window and have a look for ourselves and we can answer that question. And there's a right or a wrong answer. There was no right or wrong answer to my question about the planet made of ice cream, was there? And it lets your imagination flow and your creativity comes into play. And it allows you to extend your language in extremely rich ways, which it doesn't happen if I just ask you what's the weather like today. So how about being playful in your classroom and try to use some of these what if questions rather than the typical ones that you always use. Sometimes use the typical, sometimes use the creative ones. See what happens. What we're going to be doing today then is we're going to first reflect upon whether we are creative people, whether we are creative teachers, and what creativity is. We'll explore possibility thinking and the power of questions, using what if questions as our guide, because creativity is massive, but we're going to narrow it down to what if questions. And we're going to go from imagination to creativity and find out where they meet. We're going to be examining some simple and practical exercises and see how some of these can become bigger projects, not just small exercises that allow children to engage in bigger projects with their creativity. And finally, I want you to visualize this session today as a journey. We're going to start with some questions that are going to guide us along the way, going from imagination to creativity. And while we travel, we're going to come to some stations, as if we were on a bus or a train, but instead of stopping at bus stations or train stations, what we're going to be doing is we're going to get to some imagination stations or some creation stations. And these will be opportunities for you to put your imagination and your creativity into practice, like short brain breaks or short little energizing exercises here and there, and make the most of these, because these are things that you might be able to do in your classrooms as well. So are you ready to rock? Tell me in the chat box if you're ready to rock and start. Yes? Okay. When I say ready to rock, you need to say ready to roll. So in the chat box, can I have a ready to roll? Ready to rock? Ready to roll. Patricia is absolutely ready. Fabulous. In a classroom, you need your classroom management techniques, and these don't have to be boring. These can also be creative. Classroom management techniques can also be creative, like call and response. If I say ready to rock, you say ready to roll. And I'm using this one today because it's like a marble. And in my session today, I'm going to be giving generic ideas and my own ideas about imagination and creativity, but also some examples taken from Helbling's course for primary called Marbles. Okay, so when I say ready to rock today, you need to say in the chat box, ready to roll. Are you creative? You might not be Mozart, you might not be Picasso, but do you consider yourself to be a creative person or a creative teacher? Or maybe more of a creative person than a creative teacher, or more of a creative teacher than a creative person? Yes, a little, okay. So let's do a little test to find out. This is not this is this is not a spoon. This is what is this? If this is not a spoon, this is a microphone, Patricia. Very good. Or a trumpet. Okay, did that sound like a trumpet? This is not a spoon. This is a guitar. Very good. What else could it be? This is not a spoon. This is what? A remote control for the washing machine, someone said. Victoria, lovely. A mirror, yes. A weapon, a hairbrush, or a comb, a wand, abracadabra, magnifying glass. It could be my friend. Hello, Hello. I'm fine, thank you. How are you? I'm great. So a spoon can become a load of things. If I asked, what is? This is not a spoon, this is something different. This is, of course, great to use with Not a Box or Not a Stick, which are stories for children. And those are wonderful stories to get children's imagination to flow and think about how things might be what they seem to be or might be something different. But you are definitely a creative bunch, no doubt about that. A lolly stick, a drumstick. I've always thought of myself as a creative person, and I think that that was what I was able to extend into teaching to become a creative teacher. I have always enjoyed the arts. I did Scottish dancing when I was little. I went to piano lessons, drama lessons. Actually, I wanted to be a musician before I decided to become a teacher. And I went to music school and I trained to be a professional singer and a professional piano player. I was an actress in The Performers, a theatre and education company in Argentina. I was also the backing singer in a rock and roll and blues band, which stopped when I came over to London. And at some point of that creative and artistic journey, I decided to become a creative teacher. And I naturally put all my creativity and artistic background into teaching. And I'm sure this background has shaped the way I teach. And in fact, I don't think I have ever met a teacher who wasn't creative in one way or another, because I think that all teachers are creative, whether you realize it or not. What do you think? I think teaching itself is an art form. We craft lessons, we improvise when we need to change things or things don't go as planned. We adapt to different learners and circumstances and audiences. Many teachers create their own props to teach, or they find interesting props to teach with. Puppeteering, storytelling, they're all art forms. In some way, we are creative people. Some teachers are wonderful at cooking or gardening or landscaping, and that's all creative as well. So I think we all have an artistic side. Believe in yourself to be creative. But I think we do need to decide what we mean by being creative. Sometimes our responses about creativity are based on some misconceptions about what creativity really is, which usually come from the big C of creativity, where we imagine a famous poet or musician or artist. But I'm going to be taking this definition today, which is the ability to look at the world around us, see how it is, and imagine other possibilities that are not immediately present or based on our immediate personal experience. Creativity is seeking the possibilities and then trying to make these imaginings into material reality. So I like this one because it's got a lot to do with how children behave and how children think, which is looking at the world around them and seeing how it is and being very imaginative and having that big imagination. And this definition emphasizes the power of imagination and seeing beyond the current reality and then translating what you have imagined into possibilities that are tangible, into something that is an outcome. Yes, creativity makes us find answers and solutions, absolutely. And teaching is a creative art, and it takes a bit of lateral thinking. Yes, of course. So that's all it is really. So as a teacher, if you take an activity or something that you do in the classroom or the way that you do things in your classroom, your teaching style, and you look at it and you see how it is, but then you imagine other possibilities for it, you can do amazing things and things that you've never done before. And it might not go well, or it might will. So you need to, it's trial and error. You need to try things. Look at your classroom, rearrange the seating into a different possibility. That's all it takes, maybe. So what if you removed all the chairs from the classroom? What type of activities could you do then? Or what if you could take your students outside? What implications may that have on your mood or your dynamics? Or what if your students were suddenly the teachers and they came to the front of the class and they teach you instead? Or what if tomorrow you walked into class and you had no course book? How could you teach? What would you do? What if your students designed the next unit in the book? What if your classroom walls could talk? What would they say? I hope good things. What if today we could look at teaching English through the children's eyes instead of the teachers? And what if we could create an imaginary world by using English language projects? And that is one of the questions that I want you to keep in your mind, because we're going to go through this journey to get to that point at the end where we're going to be looking at an imaginary world, which will be a nice project. Gloria says removing chairs makes everyone equal, and that is absolutely true. Sometimes when we take away the barriers in the classroom, which are the desks and the chairs, we are all the same. And that happens a lot in pre-primary, where we sit on a carpet and we all sit in a circle and the teacher becomes another member of the class. And sometimes we ask children to come and play mini teacher. So that's a wonderful way to look at it as well. If you're not teaching in pre-primary and thinking about how you can change things later on to make it match children's still very curious nature and creative nature and big imaginations, even if they're not as small as the pre-primaries. Oh, imagination station. When we get to imagination station, remember this is a bit little like a brain break, so you don't hear me just chatting along all the time. So in this imagination station, I'm going to ask you to get a piece of paper and a pen, if you've got one near you, or maybe a drawing app on your tablet or your smartphone, or maybe just a finger. So be creative. Find a way to do this activity with whatever you've got, and it could be just a finger. What if this was a real object or an animal or whatever? What would it be? Get your finger, draw that outline and add to it and see what you can turn it into. Paloma says Aristotle used to take his pupils on a walk, didn't he? Yes, and he asks a lot of questions. Absolutely. So we've got flowers, plants, we've got angels' wings. I hadn't thought of that. A curl, a butterfly, a worm, a dragon. Wow, that must be a great drawing. Butterfly. Hands to say hello. A twist, a clover, puffy hand, says Chris. Yes, probably. So I could ask you other types of questions if I wanted to guide this a bit more. For example, what if this was a flower? What colour would it be and what would it smell like? Or what if this was part of an animal? What animal would it be? Or what if this shape could fly? What would it be? What if this shape was something to eat? What would it be? And I can guide it and narrow it down a little bit if I wanted to. Turkey, says Doris, yes. But what if we removed creativity from education? What would happen? If you asked a 5-year-old, 3, 4, 5-year-old, to draw you a picture, they probably would. They'll get a pen, you'll get a crayon, whatever, and they'll make you a drawing. And they'll tell you about it proudly, and they'll say, this is me, my mum, my brother, my house. You tell them, tell me a little story, or tell me something about your day, and they will. They'll tell you something. They'll make something up if they need to. It might not be the total truth always, but they will tell you something. But ask a 17-year-old to draw you a picture. I can't. I don't know how to draw. I'm not good at drawing. That will be the answer of many, no doubt. Ask them to tell you a story. They'll freeze. They'll assume or expecting a right or wrong answer, that you're testing them. And this tells us that somewhere along the way, that natural spark, that big imagination and that creativity and that curiosity has somehow been pushed down. Of course, plus many other things that are happening in the lives of teens, of course. But here's the danger. As Ariane says, it will turn boring. As Elisa says, we would be lost. Yeah. It would be a tragedy, says Jose. The class would become boring, says Melissa. Everyone, it's better to work with children then they're more creative. It's relevant to arise motivation and interest, and it would not be engaging for students. Absolutely true. The danger is also not only thinking of the now, the here and now in the classroom, but the future. The world that our students are going to be living in is uncertain. It's fast changing. And if we take creativity away, we're taking away their ability to adapt, to problem solve. Someone said before, creativity has got to do with solving problems, to imagine new solutions. We don't need much knowledge or right or wrong answers nowadays. We've got robots for that. We've got Alexa. You can ask Google, you can ask ChatGPT for the answers. But they're not the ones doing the imagining. They're not the ones doing the creating. That's what we want our students to be able to do, to solve those problems, to find things to do with those right or wrong answers. So let's flip the question. What if education didn't remove creativity, but instead nurtured it? We would have then learners who are resilient, who are confident, who are curious, who are adaptable, who can solve problems, that can see possibilities and not just the problems, and learners who are ready for whatever comes next. So we have Anna Kraft, who, Anna and her colleagues, came up with this idea of possibility thinking. Possibility thinking is a creative pedagogy that starts with imagination and flows into creativity. It's the engine for the little C creativity that you use in your classrooms, like writing silly poems or silly rhymes, or drawing their own versions of stories, or cracking codes. All those activities that you do in your classroom that are little C creativity, for which students need to use their creativity in small ways, in contrast to the big C creativity, which is the famous kind of creativity, or groundbreaking new inventions. It's about being imaginative, using imagination to discover other possibilities, finding solutions to problems. It's about asking questions, which children naturally do, and that's why it's so important, because it comes to them naturally. And play. Imagination starts with the right questions, they say, and in playing with these ideas and these questions and the imagination, you can play with language and you can play in the classroom. So you want creativity to be playful. Using language isn't just about being correct, it's about expressing ideas. Never forget that, because we're used to trying to get the right or wrong answer from our students. Make sure it's grammatically correct, that's fine, but also, are they expressing themselves? And that is really the big thing here. So in possibility thinking, there is a shift from what is questions to what if question. So we tweaked a question before, from what is the weather like today to what if we lived on a planet made of ice cream. We're still working with the same lexical set, the same language, but we're expressing much more. We're becoming creative with it. So this kind of thinking of different possibilities allows learners to engage with problems through question posing, like what if or why, which is a typical question that little children ask that stem from their curiosity about the world around them, or acting as if. If you were Goldilocks, how would you feel? In the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, acting as if. So this is where I'm taking these ideas from, possibility thinking, and the posing of questions starting with what if. What if we didn't ask what if questions? This would then still be a circle, and it would remain a circle forever, instead of having the possibility to become the wheels of a car, or a girl, or abstract art, as my daughter described it. I asked my children, Alex and Mila, to turn this circle into something, whatever. What if it wasn't a circle and it was something else? And my son came up with the car using 2 circles instead of looking at one at a time, which I thought was great. That's very creative of you. I would have just used one of the circles. And my daughter said that the top one is abstract art. I asked her if it was a flower. For me, it was a flower, but for her, it's just abstract art. That's what it is. We'd be asking, what is this? A circle. Rather than, what if this wasn't a circle, what would it be? And giving it more possibilities. So what would happen in the classroom is that we would fall into the trap of asking display questions instead of referential questions. I said before, possibility thinking allows us to shift from what is questions to what if questions. And this is important because the what is questions that we ask a lot in class. What is this? What is the past tense of this? What is the answer to this? These questions are not enough. They are not fulfilling the complete desire of children to understand the world, to discover and explore what is around them. We are not doing them justice. They want more from their adults. They are really smart. They need more from their parents and from their teachers. And now more than ever, children need permission to dream and be imaginative and create, because most of the time they're stuck to a screen that just tells them stuff. So if we don't use what if questions, we would end up asking the typical what is questions that we all know the answers to. What is this? It's a spoon. Is it big or small? What color is it? How many spoons are there? Those kinds of questions are display questions. Teacher knows the answer. Students need to give the right answer, not the wrong answer. And no one really cares if this is big or small, or if it's brown, or it's a spoon. What we care about is finding other ways of looking at the spoon and being imaginative and creative with the things that are around us so that we can think of different possibilities and looking at the world in different ways. So we don't want it to look like it's a test. But do they all have to start with what if? No, not necessarily. There are other questions that can be creative too, as long as we don't fall into the trap. For example, I want to ask my students about colours. Instead of, what colour is this spoon? I could ask, what colour was your day? Show me the pencil that represents it. So I'd still be checking if a child knows their colours, but not asking an obvious question that we all know the answer to anyway. And it transmits that I'm interested in the child. Purple, for example. Or I could do a relaxation activity. And I could say, okay, everyone, let's blow up a balloon. So take a deep breath and blow. Oh, what colour was your balloon? What about your balloon? What about your balloon? Was it really, really big or was it a bit small? And I would still be asking for students to give me colour words and asking about shapes, big or small, but in a different way. Yes. Fernando's balloon was red, so I bet Ismeen's balloon was green. My balloon was yellow. So we all have a different coloured balloon. Do you think questions? Do you think giraffes are shy? Those are good questions too. Maybe we think that because giraffes are very quiet. Might they be shy? Or I wonder questions. I wonder what a carrot would say if it could talk. What would a carrot say if it could talk? Those kinds of questions are great to engage imagination. So these are questions that are referential. We don't have a right or wrong answer for them. We don't know exactly what the answer is because it sparks the students' imaginations. So they feel referential, they're imaginative, they're playful, but they can still target grammar and vocabulary like a display question would. Okay, the carrot would say, indeed, Gloria says. Perrin says, I hate rabbits. Great answers. Yay! Another imagination station here. A brain break, something that you can do with your students. And this is going to show how the previous point about using different questions to what if that can give you the same result also work. So it's not what if, but it's an I'm a what? Okay, listen to this. I'm going to read it to you. You pay attention and pay attention mostly to how you feel as this object. You're a worn out school bag. You're a school bag resting in the corner of a busy classroom. You've been dropped carelessly on the floor, lying half open with books and papers sticking out. Children rush past you, some stepping on you without noticing. Finally, your owner picks you up, shakes you around roughly, and zips you up, but leaves a book behind on the floor. How do you feel? Fernando says, I've been used a lot, I'm tired, I need a break. Oh, is that teacher talking or school bag talking? Gloria says, school bag, oh my God. I feel sad and tired, ignored, sad, disappointed. What would you say if you could talk? Ignored, so sad, old. Yes, poor me. That's what you would say. Absolutely. I would feel terrible. So you could be an almost empty tube of toothpaste in a dark drawer. You could be a park bench feeling used by different people every day, getting rained on, being slept on. A forgotten toy, a coin being passed from hand to hand. You could get your students to describe the life of their pencil. Did it fall on the floor today? Did it break today? Did it get sharpened today? And describe its daily life and its daily routines. So you could use all that language that you normally use anyway. but with objects that don't usually have feelings. And it's a good way also to put yourself in the place of others, which are, in this case, inanimate objects. But it helps to start building that sense of empathy. Please take care of me. It's kind of, yeah, please, buddy, please. Lovely. So what if we went from possibility to creation? That means from imagination to creativity. We've stopped at lots of imagination stations today, and I think it's time to stop at some creation stations very soon as we're getting closer to our destination. But first, imagination is the spark, it's the possibility, it's the foundation, seeing beyond the here and now. It's the internal process, it's what learners see in their minds, and it's the raw material. It needs to be imagined first, whereas creativity comes after. It's the practical expression of that imagination. It's the external process that turns imagination into a product or an action. It's what you do with the idea, the transformation of ideas into something external, the creation. And Lev Vygotsky, I'm sure you've heard of Vygotsky, argued that imagination is the basis of all creative activity. All of human creations originate from imagination. Ken Robinson agrees. He defined imagination as the source of our creativity, and creativity as putting imagination to work. That is, imagination is the ability to bring to the mind things that are not present, and creativity is the process of turning those imaginative ideas into something real and something valuable. So we'll stop at our next imagination station to then move into our creation station. Okay, so we're going to see how these two meet now by going from imagination station to creation station. Are you ready to rock? Ready to roll, Elisa? You were absolutely ready to roll right now. Okay, so I'm going to whisper for this one. And I'm going to whisper because this will be a calmer brain break. This is a visualization exercise. For this one, stop rolling now. Stop rolling. For this one, you need to close your eyes and imagine. So no writing in the chats, because you're going to have your eyes closed, and if you try to write in the chat, you will write something that makes no sense at all. So if you write in the chat, I will know that you're cheating because you've got your eyes open. So there's no writing in the chat right now. Sit comfortably in your chair, and I will begin when you've got your eyes closed. Sit comfortably in your chair, close your eyes, and imagine. Take a deep breath. Breathe out. And relax. You can see your favorite food floating in the air. What if you could make your favorite food even better? How would you make it even better? Can you think of any crazy combinations? Or maybe you would add something different to your food. Use all your senses. Give it a different shape, a different scent. Change its colours. Does it make a sound? What would that food look like? What are the ingredients? Hold your new, crazy, creative, favourite food in your mind, and now open your eyes. I hope that didn't make you too hungry. Now don't tell us, Fernando, don't tell us. Shh. You have to keep that in your mind. Don't tell us in the chat box and keep it for yourself. I'll ask you later. We want to put that spark of imagination into creativity now. We want to put it into practice and do something with it, because what is an idea for if we're not going to be doing anything with it? The teacher's role is to spark that creativity of your young learner's imagination and channel it to be playful and creative into a task where the language is used, because you are teaching the language in the end, right? So creation station, our first creation station, to be creative with this imaginative task. What could your students do to engage creatively with their imagined food? I've got some ideas here, but if you have any others, you can put them in the chat box. Draw their food on a paper plate. So you could give a paper plate to everybody, they could draw it, or use cutouts or coloured paper to create their banana split with strawberries, or teddy bear shaped chocolate sushi. Or they could use modelling clay to create their food, like some spaghetti cake. Or they could create a collaborative menu with all their creative, crazy creations and give a price to each food. How much would ice cream salad be? Or how much would guitar-shaped waffles be? Or they could role play restaurant. Could I have some spaghetti cake, please? What else could your students do creatively with what they have imagined? The question alone is okay, but sometimes it's not enough for it to actually be something creative and for them to have ownership over that, and be proud of what they have come up with. My new food is flour cakes, for example. They're pancakes, they're very big. My garden has got pancake flowers. All the flowers are pancakes with chocolate or ice cream. I can eat them every day. That's an example from Marbles, from My Planet Food. Isn't that lovely? Yes. Flora says she really likes the ideas, and Itzol says really love this activity, because they are wonderful activities to put imagination into practice. A collaborative Canva design, and students add the ingredients. Fabulous. The best junk food dish ever. All kinds of sweets and chips. Yummy. Great. Yes, absolutely. A master chef contest, Jonette. Yes. But I know that you are very tired teachers, and you don't want to be making anything with modelling clay or anything. So would you like to just tell me in the chat box what it is that you had imagined? What is your crazy creative food, if you feel like sharing it? It makes everyone hungry, doesn't it? Sorry, I've only got 20 more minutes, and then you can go off and have something to eat. So if you want to tell us all what you've been imagining in the chat box, that would be wonderful. And while you do that, I'm going to give you the chance to give you all the possibilities to imagine that you've just got home from teaching your lessons. You've come from class to class, you've been working all day, you're exhausted, you're still thinking about your job, you've still got planning and marking to do. You're thinking about that poor kid that still needs support and how you will be a life changer for that kid. Anyway, you're such a tired teacher. You need help, please. You need help with your chores at home. What if you could have a robot to help you with everything? Imagine your robot helper. What would your robot look like? Is it big or is it small? Or how many legs has it got? How many arms could it? That would be fantastic, wouldn't it, Elisa? Yes, says America. How many arms has it got? How does it help in the morning? How does it help you in the evening, which is, I think, the worst part, right? What can it do? What would you want it to do? And notice that in this activity, again from Marbles, the language that comes into this activity, daily routines, get dressed, have breakfast, brush teeth in the morning, in the evening, it has got, it can. So you're still using the same language that you would normally be teaching, but you're doing it in a really imaginative and creative way. So what you could do with this is an example of one of these robots, which I love, because not only one robot, but 6 robot helpers. I've got 6 robot helpers. They've got wings. In the morning, they fly and bring me my clothes. In the evening, they play games with me. My robot helpers are great. Guillermina would need a small robotic army. Is that how exhausted you are? Woohoo, a robot, says Ariane. You're all very excited about having a robot. I'm sorry to tell you, we're only being imaginative and creative. We're not actually making real robots for teachers, although someone could do it, right? Year 2025, why not? Maybe next year. Keep your fingers crossed. So what could we do? Maybe have your students draw your robot helpers and write a description. Or what if you created your robots with boxes or Lego and then present it describing what it can do? Maybe they can write a poem, or even better, a robot rap, enchant it like a robot with robot voices and do a robot dance. What about pretending being your robot, showing us what it does and how it moves and how it talks? So dramatizing it. Yeah, you would need a robot to correct compositions. That's what your robot would do. Yeah, my robot can correct compositions. Lovely. Okay, if you could think of anything else, of course, you're free to put it in the chat box. And Paloma says, I would let them freely create. Who knows what they can come up with? And that is also a lovely idea, Paloma. Thank you for suggesting that, because you know what? You could put these ideas plus one that is empty in a choice board. Choice boards are fabulous. Thank you for bringing that up. Have you ever seen a choice board? If you haven't, Google it when this session finishes. Not now, not now, pay attention to me. When the session finishes, go off and Google choice board, and you can put all the different options into a choice board. And of course, it's for children to choose which of those they would like to do. Of course, you would need quite a lot of time, because it will be a short activity, because if someone chooses to build the robot with boxes, they might take longer than someone who is going to draw the robot or whatever. But you can give them choice and always have something for fast finishes. But that is a really good idea as well. Make up a hello song using their robot stories. I love that, making up a hello song. Imagine all the robots singing the hello song. So these two last examples are actually taken from pages from Marbles, where there is an activity at the end of each unit called Imagine, Create and Share. And but it doesn't end here. What if I told you that these last two are actually part of a full-blown project? These activities build into an overarching project in which we create an imaginary world in English. Remember that question that I told you to keep in your mind at the beginning, which was, what if we could create an imaginary world by using an English language project? Well, here it is. It does exist. In Marbles, for each topic, the children imagine and draw aspects of their own planet or their own world, gradually creating an overarching project called My Imaginary World, which is found at the back of the pupils' book. So at the end of each unit, they do the activity and then they transport it into their imaginary world or their imaginary planet page. And it builds this visual record of children's creative responses to each of those units in the book. So you've got My Planet Food, you've got My Robot Helper, you've got others like My Planet Animal, or My Planet Weather, or My Planet People. And it's of course using all that language that children are going to be learning in the unit to put into this full-blown project at the end. So it could look something like this, but of course with children's creative ideas in there. And it's going to be covering all the topics in the book. So the wonderful thing about projects is that feeling of ownership and the connection between the different parts, where you're putting everything together, that sense of ownership and that sense of being proud of what you have imagined, and it's turned into something that you can show others as well. So they are fantastic, aren't they, Fernando? I'm glad that you like these ideas. So if you have any other ideas about how you would put this imagination into creativity, please do share. And I'm still waiting for your crazy food. Please do share in the chat box. I do want to read some of your crazy food, see how creative you've got and how crazy those foods have been, if you want to share. Gummy tacos. I love that, Chris. Lovely. So in what ways have we been creative today? Yes, you've done yours, Fernando. Blue chilaquiles. Oh, of course. Many of you are in Mexico. Yes. Chilaquiles with rainbow salsa. Those are wonderful. Blueberry pizza with ice cream. I love it. You've been very, very creative today. So, in what other ways have you been creative? We shifted the what is question into a what if question, from what is the weather like today to what if we lived on a planet made of ice cream. This is not a to this is a. Lots of different what if questions, like what if a carrot could talk. Finish the picture, the one you did with your finger or with your pencil in your book, where we transformed a picture into, we completed the picture and turned it into something. The circle challenge, which I did not ask you to do, but where I showed you a circle and what my kids did with the circle. I'm a what? The school bag. And we looked at my Planet Food, my robot helper, and the big project for my imaginary world. And we've also got Patricia says flying tacos with a rain of salsas. An alfajor tower with a chocolate bridge, Andrea, lovely. Yeah, fabulous ideas. Thank you very much for sharing those. And I have one last question for you today, which is, what if you put something into practice in class today? Would it be one of the activities? Would it be a concept? Would it be an imagination station break? Would it be a creation station? Would it be this idea that came up, which was the choice boards, and allow students to choose how they want to be creative? What would it be that you would want to put into practice this week? Mango with wings and different sauces. What if questions? Okay, you can come up with loads of what if questions. You can Google loads of fun what's if questions for students, for classrooms. You can ask ChatGPT, of course, and it will come up with loads of really fun ones. And it might be a good starting point to start with what students are interested in. So if you know your students are interested in dinosaurs, ask what if dinosaur questions. So you can grab their attention from there as well and motivate them with things that you know they're interested in. Imagination station, along with my usual mystery solving tasks. Oh, Chris, we want to know more about your usual mystery solving tasks. So those like crack the code kind of thing. I like to use the prompt about the weather and then take it from there. Fabulous. Yeah, start small, start with baby steps and then take it from there. What if you could create your personalized pet? Yashamina, that is excellent. That is excellent. And young children usually enjoy the topic of pets, don't they? And make their own little pet, like a Tamagotchi kind of thing, and they'd have to look after it. It would be the balloon activity in colours. Elisa, great for classroom management because you get your students to breathe. So it's a really good warm up and relaxation activity to do for classroom management as well. Imagination stations, yes. How would you describe the impact of creativity on students' motivation? Oh, Sarah, namesake without an H. Mine is with an H. Describing the impact of creativity on students' motivation. Well, massive, huge, ginormous. Yes, I think it's really motivating because you, of course, you're going to shift away from what students are used to and what they're normally going to be expecting in a classroom to something completely crazy and something novel. And when you do things like that, it motivates students to want to be engaged in what is happening in the classroom because it's not more of what they're used to. It's not the typical English class where we're going to open our books and do the grammar exercise. Creativity has a huge impact on students' motivation, Sarah, 100%. And if you try it in your classes, you will see that. There is another question I see from Anna. How can the usage of AI contribute to the development of creativity as a soft skill? Well, Anna, that is a good question, because of course AI is around all the time these days, and to be honest, it can be quite creative in ways. So if you do ask ChatGPT for creative what if questions, it will give you some wonderful ones, some amazing creative ideas. So yes, artificial intelligence can contribute very well to creativity. I think it's mostly great, to be honest, from my point of view, it's great for the teacher to use. And if you have students who are at the age of using ChatGPT or any of those artificial intelligence tools that they can access, if they're at the age of being able to use them and they're at the point where they can write a good prompt, because that's the problem as well, they need to be able to write a good prompt, then they could get creative ideas from it as well. And always explain to them that artificial intelligence is great and it's there to help us. It's like a robot to help us, but we're not just going to leave it at that. We want to do something with that we get from AI. So the skill really is to be creative with what AI has given you as creativity. I think that's where we need to go and try and get students to be creative with what the AI gives you. Hope I answered your question, Anna. Natalia, the color of their day. That's nice. The new imagined world, the imagination stations with helper robots, projects and dreams. What if you were a Roblox character? There you go. So you're thinking about your students' interests, and I'm sure they're going to be interested in answering that question. So that's where you want to go. Solve the mystery of the science behind everyday things. Oh yes, Chris, solving the mystery of science behind everyday things. It's massive. Amazing. I love that. Your personal utopia. What would there be? Lovely. Imagination for amusing events. Enact a mystery. Very basic few rules, just not to get too off track till the end of term. Would you use any of these activities with adults, Patricia? Yes, definitely yes. To be honest, I am more of a young learner teacher, and I have a lot of experience in young learners. I have taught adults and I have taught them creatively, and it works as well. So definitely yes, but always go to things that are going to interest them and are at their cognitive level and are not too childish and not too playful for them. It still has to be playful, but not too much, because you don't want them to feel like you're doing something that is childish with them. So use topics that you know they're going to be interested in, of course. Take them out of their comfort zone. Lovely. And then the detectives, Chris is great. Lovely stuff. Wow, there's lots and lots of ideas in there. So I'm going to be saving that chat box, and I'm going to be reading all your ideas later as well. So just before we finish, I would like to end with a poem called Put Something In. Draw a picture. Write a nutty poem. Sing a mumble-gumble song. Whistle through your comb. Do a loony-goony dance across the kitchen floor. Put something silly in the world that ain't been there before. So maybe we can start as teachers putting something silly in the classroom that ain't been there before. So these are, of course, some ways of using imagination and creativity in the classroom, and there are a million ways more. These are just some ways. Let your imagination run wild and come up with infinite creative ways of teaching and learning, and be creative yourself. Creativity stems from creativity. You can't just tell your students be creative. They need to see it, and they need to feel it and experience it and practice it. So I hope you are ready to rock. Are you ready to rock? And ready to roll with creativity. So thank you, Helbling, and thank you to all the teachers out there. Thank you, Martin Tavares and Lucy, for your support.